and they regroup, but exposure is their defeat in progress. Witches do not run quietly when exposed. They retaliate and they regroup, but exposure is their defeat in progress. My friend, when you walk in truth, real, spiritual truth, you become a threat to every system of darkness that has been hiding in your life, your family, or your environment. Witchcraft survives by secrecy, but the moment it is unmasked, it panics. Why? Because the light of discernment breaks the power of deception. When God reveals, it is never random. Revelation is either for redemption or destruction. And in this season, many of you are not just sensing evil, you're seeing it clearly. You're recognizing the real source of strange patterns, betrayals, sudden attacks, and spiritual heaviness. You're realizing that someone close, someone in your circle, your family, your job, or even your church has been operating under a demonic agenda. This is not paranoia, this is prophetic intelligence. But let me prepare you, when witches are exposed, they don't walk away quietly. They launch counterattacks. They don't need your money or your name. They want your spiritual position. They want your voice silenced, your mind confused, and your destiny delayed. And too many believers mistake this post-exposure warfare as punishment, not realizing it is confirmation of progress. You are under attack not because you're cursed, but because you've become dangerous. The Bible is clear in Luke 12:2-3 that everything hidden will be revealed. Ephesians 5:11 commands us not just to avoid the works of darkness, but to expose them. This means that spiritual confrontation is part of kingdom dominion. You can't occupy territory without driving out serpents. You can't walk in purpose while tolerating poison. So if God opened your eyes, He is trusting you with a kingdom assignment. You didn't catch a witch by accident. You discerned an illegal spirit because you've been elevated to another level of warfare. But now what? This message is a divine intelligence briefing. It will unveil how witches retaliate, how they manipulate, how they launch silent attacks after exposure. And more importantly, it will arm you with the boldness, discernment, and spiritual law needed to stand your ground and never go back to spiritual blindness again. Welcome to the battle that begins after the veil is torn. Let's get equipped. Let's stay alert. Let's rule. One of the most overlooked but spiritually revealing responses of witches once they are exposed is sudden silence. This is not just an emotional or social withdrawal. It is a calculated spiritual maneuver. It may look like someone suddenly blocking you, ghosting you, or avoiding your presence, but what is truly happening is much deeper than natural behavior. This is the response of a spiritual agent who has been spiritually unmasked and now retreats to regroup, recalibrate, and reinforce their next attack, but without alerting you. You must understand something foundational about how witchcraft operates. Access is everything, whether through emotional intimacy, friendly closeness, mentorship, or shared vulnerability. Witches gain spiritual leverage when you allow them into your space without discernment. As long as they have proximity, they can monitor you, speak into your atmosphere, mimic your language, and even counterfeit your assignment. But the moment you receive divine revelation and recognize that what is attached to them is not of the kingdom but of darkness, they lose their grip. And when their grip is broken, the first thing they do is disconnect suddenly, because connection is their power cord. This disconnection is not peace, it is posturing. They are retreating not because they're defeated, but because they are seeking another point of entry. They understand spiritual timing. They know how to go underground and lay dormant. They know how to wait for you to drop your guard, second guess your discernment, or even regret exposing them. Silence, to the spiritually untrained, seems innocent, but to those who understand the realm of spirits, silence is often a setup. You'll notice they won't argue with your discernment. They won't confront your realization. Why? Because they know once the veil is lifted, truth doesn't need to be proven. It only needs to be declared. Their goal is not to fight with you on the surface. It's to manipulate you back into relationship, influence, or familiarity when you least expect it. That's why you must not confuse distance with deliverance. Just because a person is no longer around doesn't mean the spirit attached to them has stopped watching or planning. Witches don't always leave your life. They often hide in plain sight, waiting for another open door. This is why many kingdom believers get tricked into reopening spiritual doors too quickly. The moment a manipulator goes silent or vanishes, the believer feels guilt, shame, or false obligation to check on them, thinking it's the right thing to do. But let me be clear. If God exposed a spirit to you, that is not your cue to fix it emotionally. It is your call to seal the door legally. This means going into spiritual protocol, revoking every soul tie, canceling every verbal agreement, cleansing your home, and commanding every residue of that connection to be destroyed by fire. Because silence is often the calm before a demonic return. Witchcraft is deeply strategic. When a witch disconnects, it's often because your spiritual resistance has become too strong for their current level of control. Your prayers have become effective. Your worship has become disruptive. Your discernment has become too sharp for their rituals and manipulations to hold ground. They're not avoiding you because you're wrong. They're avoiding you because you're awake. And an awakened believer is more dangerous than 1,000 passive Christians singing songs without revelation. Also pay attention to patterns. The moment you called out their strange behavior, questioned their flattery, or exposed their double life in prayer, that's when they went quiet. That's not random. That's spiritual backlash. Some of you thought you were being ignored by someone offended, but in the spirit realm, you broke their altar, and now they're trying to rebuild it from afar. Don't be naive. Don't run after what God removed. That silence is not abandonment. It's a clue. This is also why you must not rush to replace silence with noise. Some believers, in the discomfort of relational disconnection, go searching for new friendships or distractions. But you must sit with the silence and discern it. Let the Holy Spirit teach you what was really going on behind the scenes. Let the silence become a training ground, not a trap of loneliness. Remember, you were not called to be comfortable. You were called to be consecrated. Isolation is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the divine quarantine that keeps your spirit safe while heaven rewires your alignment. And here's the key. When they disconnect, don't re-engage out of nostalgia. Don't fall for the lie that they probably just needed space. No, what they need is for you to forget what God showed you. But you cannot unsee truth. Once your spirit identifies witchcraft, it becomes spiritually illegal to pretend you didn't see it. You are now a steward of revelation, and with that stewardship comes responsibility to guard your gates, protect your peace, and walk in holy separation from anything and anyone that partners with darkness. Their silence is not your failure, it is your confirmation. You're walking in power. You've disrupted a system. You've turned on a light in a demonic chamber. So don't grieve over distance. Rejoice that the veil has been lifted. You're no longer being watched. You are being witnessed as a threat. And now that they've gone silent, don't be surprised when their next move gets even louder. Once witches realize that silence hasn't disarmed you, once they see that your discernment hasn't faded and your spiritual posture hasn't collapsed, the next strategy they unleash is a full-blown assault on your credibility. This is where the warfare becomes verbal. Suddenly, your name becomes a topic of twisted conversations, whispers, and deceptive narratives. This is not gossip, it is witchcraft in verbal form. It's a smear campaign. And it's designed to assassinate your character in rooms you're not in, to discredit your discernment before it bears fruit, and to manipulate the people closest to you into questioning your integrity, your intentions, and even your mental state. You must understand the weapon of a witch after exposure is influence. If they can't control your mind, they will try to control how others see you. If they can't curse your life directly, they will try to isolate you from those who carry blessing, favor, and prophetic agreement. Witches know the power of alliances, so they target the voices that affirm you. And one of the quickest ways they do that is through lies, exaggerations, character assassination, and subtle insinuations that paint you as too spiritual, unstable, bitter, or divisive. Sound familiar? These are not random attacks. They are spiritual assignments dressed in social behavior. In the spiritual realm, words are weapons. Words become spells. Words are how atmospheres are charged and agreements are made. When witches begin to lie on you after exposure, They are not just trying to ruin your reputation. They are trying to shift your spiritual covering. They want to isolate you so you can be vulnerable, wounded, unguarded, and angry, because bitterness breaks spiritual protection. This is why you must respond with wisdom, not emotion. You don't fight verbal witchcraft with carnal comebacks. You war in the Spirit with truth, legal decrees, and inner clarity. You see, one of the reasons this tactic is so dangerous is because it doesn't just come from outsiders. Sometimes it comes from family members. Sometimes it comes from old friends. Sometimes the people who now view you suspiciously are the very people who used to praise your spiritual insight. That's not just betrayal, that's spiritual manipulation. Witches are masters at casting suspicion. They drop a suggestion here, a subtle question there, and before you know it, people around you start wondering what's really going on with you. That wondering is not innocent. It is spiritually engineered suspicion intended to weaken your credibility and make others ignore your warning when the next danger comes. This is why spiritual maturity is vital after exposure. You must know the difference between defending your name and preserving your anointing. Sometimes silence is your greatest warfare, not because you have no answer, but because you refuse to lower your spiritual rank by fighting on the level of flesh. Witches want you to retaliate emotionally. They want you to clap back, to post online, to gossip in return. Why? Because that breaks your legal positioning in the Spirit. The moment you leave the courtroom of heaven and enter the courtroom of public opinion, you've stepped into their trap. Don't bite the bait. Instead, let the lies expose the liar. Just like Haman in the book of Esther built gallows for Mordecai but was hanged on them himself, every witch who uses their mouth to destroy you will eventually be caught in the snare of their own slander. That's not revenge. That's spiritual justice. And the kingdom operates in justice. Psalm 35 reminds us to let the Lord contend with those who contend with us, and to ask Him to let their path be dark and slippery with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. That's not personal, that's protocol. But be warned, a smear campaign often comes wrapped in kindness. It might start with them reaching out to your mutual friends in concern. It might be hidden in prayer requests. I'm really praying for them. They seem off lately. It may even come from spiritual leaders who've unknowingly partnered with witchcraft because they didn't test the Spirit. And so now people are looking at you through a fog that was spoken into the airwaves by a mouth under demonic assignment. This is the cost of exposure, the backlash of narrative warfare. But again, don't fear it. Recognize it. What you must do during this time is remain grounded in your assignment. Do not shift your focus. Keep building what God gave you. Keep praying. Keep fasting. Keep operating in your kingdom identity. The moment you start defending yourself to people who were never called to understand your calling, you step out of position. Let your fruit speak louder than their fiction. Let your consistency outlive their confusion. And trust that every lie will eventually collide with undeniable truth. Understand this: witches lie to erase the memory of what you exposed. They know if they can't silence your voice, they'll try to make others stop listening to it. That's why your assignment is not just to stay pure, but to stay visible. Keep shining, keep preaching, keep operating in discernment, because darkness hates exposure, but it fears persistence.